Welcome to another chapter podcast with your hosts, Claire and Rebecca.
Do you love books? Well, you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss all things books.
Welcome to Season 2, Chapter 8 of Another Chapter, the podcast. So today's episode is going to be another one of our little chatty episodes, and our inspiration for this episode is book adaptations. So myself and Claire met a few other bookstagrammers a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, a week ago.
Yeah, to see an adaptation, a stage adaptation of The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue. Probably better known for Room, I'd say would be her most famous, which is also an adaptation, actually, incidentally. But after seeing that, I suppose we were both so kind of blown away by that. And when we were on the train home, we were discussing how well it kind of went on stage, and how well it worked, and other, adaptations that we maybe have liked, have not liked. So we thought it would be a fantastic idea for an episode.
Yeah. I read The Pull of the Stars with you. We did a buddy read of it. The girls got in touch and asked, hey, do you want to go to this play of this book? And I was like, yeah, great. Sounds like a fantastic idea. And had never read the book, hadn't even heard of the book. And so I was like, yeah, okay, let's get on reading the book. I have to do that so that I know what it's based on, because sometimes an adaptation can veer quite drastically away from the original script, I suppose. But yeah, the book was fantastic. The book literally stopped me in my tracks a couple of times when I was reading it. I did listen to it too, and I just found that I had to just stop what I was doing because it was quite intense and heavy hitting.
Yeah.
And I think that the stage adaptation really held true to the messages of the book, and the characters of the book were portrayed really well. Some differences we all kind of felt that some characters came across as more comic relief than serious.
Yes. For anyone that hasn't read the book or doesn't know about it, it's one of those books like that it's been on my TBR for years. I think I actually assumed I had read it before. It's one of those kind of titles that's just been knocking around for ages in my head. And I just assumed I'd read it ages ago. And then when I went to read it with you guys, I kind of thought it might be a reread, that when I started reading it, I'd be like, oh yeah, I've read this before. And then I read it and I was like, I definitely haven't. And this is brilliant. But the story it's set in 1918 in a maternity ward in Dublin during the flu pandemic at the time. Now, as best I know, I'm sure this was written well before COVID happened, but it was actually released around the time COVID happened. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think it was released quite quickly, from what I can gather. Now, I could be potentially confusing this with a different book that I read recently, but there was something along the lines of that the book was pitched, accepted, and then because of COVID had to be done extremely quickly.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know. It would make sense, because it's one of those eerie books where I think if I'd read it at the time, I'd have been like, oh, this is... Obviously, it's so close. Yeah, it's so close to the reality of what was happening then. So yeah, it's set around the maternity ward, and the main character is a nurse in the maternity ward, Nurse Power, and it's basically set over 2 or 3 days, and about how chaotic and emotional and traumatic, but also kind of little sparks of hope, within all of that going on as well. So as you can imagine, if you haven't read it, there are obvious content warnings, and it's definitely one to check out what kind of happens in it before you read it, if you'd be a bit sensitive to anything along those lines. And even actually going in, I'm not sure if you saw that when we were going into the show, they had warnings up outside, about the nature of what was happening in it. Even though I was reading them kind of going, it's possibly a bit late to be warning people when they're on the way in the door to watch it. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose they were just covering their backsides, because it was a very intense It was a very intense play. There was no interval.
Yeah.
I had been saying to the girls that I would be crying before the interval came, and then someone said to me, "But Claire, there is no interval," which absolutely magnified the emotions that we were experiencing alongside the characters on stage. I thought it was phenomenal.
It was. From your point of view, and especially as someone who teaches and like has taught plays and stuff. So if you want to explain, like maybe what did they do differently, or what do you think works really well in terms of putting it on as a stage adaptation?
I absolutely adored how it was an all-female cast. So they basically stripped it back, got rid of a lot of the extra characters and scenes, extra backdrops, I suppose, for different scenarios. So in the book we see Nurse Power, Julia Power, she's in work in the maternity ward, and then she goes home where she's living with her brother, who has recently returned from war and is mute, and she's kind of finding it very difficult to cope with that, but trying her best to just kind of get on with it. And they cut him out completely, and he was a pretty big character.
Yeah.
In a way, I know he wasn't a main character, but he was a big enough character in the book. And even just to see her house and stuff, and her travelling through Dublin, like travelling to and from work was a big thing. She used to have to cycle some of the way, then she'd have to get a tram because she wasn't allowed to be sweaty when she arrived because the nuns would be cross or whatever. And I just thought that it was just very interesting that they took away everything that could possibly be seen as unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like they packed a punch with the play, and I think the decisions that were made to pull these characters to, and obviously they were referred to during the play, during the performance.
Yeah.
Do you know, I just thought it was really, really good. It's like, do you know, I find whenever I'm correcting work in school, and it's like, do you know, even a comparative, or it was something on someone writing about Shakespeare, and you're like, just pull it, that's waffle.
Yeah.
You always think, like, stop waffling, just get to the point, say what you need to say, and like get your marks that way. That's how I think they might have approached this. They literally pulled anything that could have been seen as waffle, that took away from the dramatic impact, the emotional punches that we were being bowled over with. And they also they changed certain characters slightly so that they provided the comic relief that some of those other minor characters who'd been removed from the play and that they had provided in the book. And it was very well done. Like, really well done.
Yeah. And it did, in fairness, even as a novel, it lends itself very well to the stage because of the fact that it is, you know, we do have, like you were saying, settings like going through the city, her home, but primarily it is set within one small space. And actually even like, it's not even a proper maternity ward. Like we know very early on, it's almost like a glorified like side room, or almost like a closet where the people, the pregnant ladies who have the flu are being put, as opposed to a general maternity ward. So like it only ever had like 3 beds in there. So it was always a really small space. So like that lent itself exceptionally well to a play, and wouldn't necessarily lend itself as well to, we'll say, a movie. Even though I suppose like Room, you know, which was another novel, it was all set for like half of it was just set in one space, exactly. But then that does move outside Room eventually. So I suppose there was more scope from the movie. But yeah, no, this lent itself so well. And I also loved that they just brought it back to the women. Dr. Lynn, who is the female physician on in the hospital over those couple of days, and who is a real person, or was a real person, I suppose, and was involved with the Republicans during the Rising. Like her character was played so well in it, and her story is one, you know, I'd say we all went on a little bit of a rabbit hole after looking about her as well, which was great.
And I just really loved, I think at the start when it initially began, like you forget, I haven't been to the cinema in a very long time, and I haven't been to see a play in a very long time either. I'd say like pre-COVID we're talking, because we've had like since COVID and all that. I forgot what it was like to be in the theatre essentially, and to have people projecting their voices in certain ways. Like I suppose the book is quite intimate because you're dealing with very personal matters. You know, there are women in labour, there are women quite unwell with the flu. There's, you know, there's a lot of hush hush around everything, and we have characters who don't exactly understand what it is ahead of them in the course of their labour, I suppose, which is very interesting because in the book that was all quite quiet, but it had to be nearly explicitly spelled out for us on stage. And with the projection of voices, everyone speaks quite loudly and quite definitively, and there's no whispering, there's no hiding away. Like, you know, the tones of things are changed slightly.
That's a good point, actually. I
did find that kind of a little bit when it started, it was a little bit jarring, just for myself, that I was like, oh God, yeah, sure, they have to be heard down at the back of the hall, because we were sitting quite close to the stage. But once I kind of just went, Claire, get over it, you're at a play, this is the way that people speak when they're performing. I just really got so soaked into it. And something that I wanted to mention that I think deserves a shout out. Now, I know obviously the cast were phenomenal. I really, really thought the cast were outstanding, and we've seen the transformation of one of the characters. They posted a reel showing the transformation in hair and makeup of one character in particular, who was quite unwell on arrival to the ward, and like, that was just, I just think it's outstanding. I think the setting, the staging, the props, the way that the stage was designed was just brilliant. I really, really loved it. And I loved how, if you go to a play, usually my experience anyway is that there are stagehands that run in and out, moving things, setting things down, preparing scenes, but it was actually the characters themselves did most of the moving of scenes and the rearranging of things. And there was the slow motion bits that they did. I just thought it was class. I thought it was a brilliant show.
I think the five of us that were at it all were very, very impressed leaving, and emotional, and just, you know, we all came out and we were all a bit quiet for a while. You know, we were all kind of decompressing, I suppose, after the emotion of it. As you said, we were sitting there for 100 minutes and it was kind of go from the get-go. So it was 100 minutes of like, and we knew what was happening. We'd only finished the book like weeks beforehand. It's not that we went in kind of not having a clue, but like, we were still get so swept up in it. So a big thumbs up from both of us anyway, I think.
Absolutely. It's still running, so if you can get tickets, grab them.
Anyone we know who has seen it has also, you know, really, really enjoyed it as well. So definitely try and get it.
Yeah.
So on that topic, we said we'd both have a think about book adaptations that we enjoyed and also one that we would like to see. So if we start with you, Claire, what is one that you really enjoyed?
I'm very excited about this because I have no idea what yours are and you have no idea what mine are. Like, I think usually we're quite prepared with what we're going to discuss and we share like our thoughts, but no, this has been quite hush-hush. One book to screen adaptation is The Road by Cormac McCarthy.
Okay. I have not read or seen that.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God, I did it in college. I remember I did some kind of a contemporary literature module, and we did that. And I remember absolutely loving it. It was my first ever experience of post-apocalyptic writing, and it just absolutely blew me away. I think it was really, really good. So then when the movie came out, and I haven't watched it since, but I actually want to watch it now again. And the same goes for the other book that I would pick. But I just think that it was really, really good. It's quite harrowing as a read, and I think that the movie was just really, really reflective of that.
Okay.
It stayed true to it. Yeah. Now, this was a long time ago that I read this. I was still doing an undergrad in UCC, so that's a very, very long time ago now. God. I think it kind of sparked something in me, because like I've spoken here before about how reading in college kind of killed my love of reading for a while, but I think this one in particular stands out to me because I was hungry for more of the post-apocalyptic stuff.
Okay.
the kind of psyche that goes with this kind of writing. I just found it really intriguing. It just made me very curious, and it made me want to read more of the same genre and see like what were people's theories, what could possibly happen. Does this seem plausible? Yes, it does. That's quite terrifying.
Yeah.
So that would be one of my choices. What did you pick?
So the first one I'm going to go with is also a book to screen adaptation, and it is The Shawshank Redemption.
Well, I should have known that.
So you should have known, yeah.
Really?
Yes, so based on the novella by Stephen King, Rita Hayworth, and The Shawshank Redemption, it obviously is like one of the best known films of all time. Did it with the Leaving Certs this year as part of their comparative course. Genuinely, I must have watched that film at least 20 or 30 times at this point. And if it was on right now, I would sit down and watch it again. Even though it was written or, I suppose adapted from a short story, essentially, the essence of it is it's still very much there. It really captures what the story was and kind of the vibe of it as well. Yeah, so that would be my first one that I loved both of them and would happily read or watch both of them again and again and again.
That's my brother's favourite movie as well. He absolutely loves The Shawshank Redemption. And it's I don't think we bought it. I need to read it.
It's great, yeah. And like even as an audiobook, obviously it's very short and it's done in the same kind of like cadence as read from the film, like Morgan Freeman. Like it comes across like, yeah, it has that real kind of old-timey vibe. Yeah, it works really, really well. So yeah, that's my first one. What would be your second one?
The second one that I've chosen is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. So Reese Witherspoon adapted it. Well, she was part of it. She played the main character and stuff. And I just really love the solitude of it. Again, someone just walking, going from A to B, trying to. We discussed this before, actually. Yeah. I like people that go and walk. Yeah, go for a walk. Yeah, I just really liked it, and I think the whole concept of going somewhere to figure yourself out and get your shit together it appeals to me for some reason.
Yeah.
So that's another one that I really loved, and I would watch that again over and over again.
Again, another one I haven't read or seen. I couldn't have guessed those two now, even though you have mentioned the Cheryl Strayed one, right? I should have possibly guessed that one.
And your number two? Because I really want to know.
My number two is actually a book to stage adaptation, and it is Louise O'Neill's Asking for It.
How did I not think of that?
Did you see it?
Yes.
Oh. I presume you went to the Everyman to see it, did you?
Yeah.
In Cork, yeah. So we were one of the lucky ones who have seen Paul Mescal on stage in a play.
Have we?
Yeah. He was Brian, one of the main guys in it.
Stop. That'll tell you now how disconnected I am from modern culture. I'm like, I did not know that I was once in the same room as this man.
It was, I think it was like 2018, so I'm pretty sure this was around the time he was, in the ad. Was it like a Rashers ad in the back of the bus? Yeah, like it was around that time, I'm pretty sure. And I remember looking him up and going, oh yeah, that's that guy. And would the normal people come out a bit after that? And I was like, geez, wow, okay, that was him. But yeah, so we have seen Paul Mescal in the flesh.
Really left a lasting impression on me.
That was stunning. That was stunningly good. I went with a few people from work, and I remember, and possibly it was the same with you, whatever, show you went to. I remember at the interval, like just before the interval, it was like one of the big kind of, I don't know, was it very emotional moments or kind of shocking moments or something? But I remember when like the curtain came down or whatever happened when it was obvious it was the break.
Yes.
Like you could have heard a pin drop inside the theatre. Everybody was just completely silent, like just totally blown away by what we had just seen. And it genuinely took a small bit of time for people to start like making noise and kind of moving around and stuff. Everyone was just like sitting in their chairs going, oh my God. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
But that was fantastic. That was excellent. And that was probably one of my first experiences outside of like school plays, like Shakespeare and stuff, of something on stage, a proper play on stage. So to see how the stage setup of it and how it all worked and how they moved from, we'll say, like the kitchen to like the house party and like the aftermath of it all. I thought it was brilliantly done.
Yeah, the staging was excellent in it.
So I really, really enjoyed that. That would definitely be my second one.
I completely forgot that I went to see that. And I remember coming out of it, and I went with a friend of mine, and like when it ended like that again, it was just completely silent. And we got out to the car and drove back home. And at one point, like we still kind of hadn't really said much other than, "Are you okay?" to one another. And I just started bawling, crying. It was just, again, another very heavy subject matter, but done spectacularly well.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Like, yeah, brilliant.
So, Rebecca, what book have you read that you would love to see adapted?
This was a really difficult question. Like, I think when I was thinking of books, there were so many that I would love to see made because I love them so much. But then I was like, oh my God, I would be so afraid that they would be made and they would either ruin the book for me somehow, or they would be terrible adaptations. So I discounted some of my choices for that reason. But what I came up with in the end was a book that I have definitely mentioned here previously. It was one of my favourite books last year, and it was Mary Doria Russell's The Sparrow. And it was recommended to us by Rosemary McCabe when we had her on the podcast. I had never heard of it before.
I just bought it the other day. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah, I did. I really hope you enjoy it. I think I did a mix of audio, or I did most of it on audio, but I'm sure I had a reading version as well. But I thought it was fantastic. And I suppose the reason I went with it was because, so for anyone that isn't familiar with it, it is essentially about space exploration, but it's about the Jesuits funding a mission for a particular group of people to go into space, which sounds absolutely ridiculous.
It sounds insane.
It does, but like it's weird because I remember when Rosemary McCabe was telling us about it and she was describing it, and even she was like, look, I'm not really selling this, but I was like, there's something very intriguing about this. There was something about it that was selling it to me, regardless of how ludicrous it sounded. But it works. It really, really works. Like, it's obviously the story is more so about like people's relationship with each other, about belief, about faith, about kind of communication. Yeah. But a particular group of people do end up in space, and they are living there for an extended period of time, and then like some of it is set, on Earth as well. It covers quite, a reasonable amount of time. So it's set just slightly in the future, if I remember correctly. And I think it would work really well because there is such huge scope there in terms of setting, in terms of the cast of characters. And they were really kind of diverse cast of characters, different ages, different kind of sorts of relationships, different backgrounds, beliefs, and so on. And I think it would work really well on screen, but also there's a part of me that even when I was reading some of the descriptions, especially about like kind of, we'll say the space kind of locations, I couldn't quite imagine what I was reading.
Okay.
I would love to be able to see it. So I would love someone who is a bit more creatively minded than me to be able to put that on screen so that I could go, oh yeah, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah.
It's a funny one where I don't actually have a very specific image in my head of anything in particular, so I don't think a movie would ruin it like that for me. You know the way sometimes you have a particular idea of a character or something like that, and then when you see a screen adaptation, you're like, oh no, that's not what I thought they were like. I don't have that. I would actually love to be shown that for this book.
Really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's why I picked that.
Do you think that would make a good like book club pick?
Do you know what? I think there would be a lot of discussion in it. So it's a very interesting one, yeah. So I think actually as a book club pick, there's a lot to discuss in it.
And I can't wait to read it.
I can't wait to hear what you think of it. It's really different. It's very different. But if you like Project Hail Mary, I'm pretty confident you'll enjoy this as well.
Loved Project Hail Mary, yeah.
Yeah. And what would be your ideal screen?
Oh God, so I went back and forth over this one. Like I could pick my books to adaptations that I loved, But when it came to picking one that I'd like to see adapted like that, I really struggled with it. So literally, like, before we came on, I was kind of going like, I don't even know how I'm going to answer this or what I'm going to say. So like the one that's in my head that I think would work extremely well and has a lot of potential would be The Women by Kristen Hanna.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Have you read it?
I haven't. That's really recent though, isn't it?
Yes, it is, but it is absolutely fantastic. I couldn't stop listening to it, so I listened to it on audio. Julia Whalen, who narrates all of Emily Henry's audiobooks,
Okay.
the narrator, and I think she's a fantastic narrator. Like, I just love her voice. It's kind of an exploration on the war in Vietnam and how women volunteered to go. People went in the army and the navy and stuff like that. And there's a well-to-do girl. Her name is Frankie McGrath, sorry. She volunteers to go with the army to Vietnam as a nurse and is trained up and is basically sent off quite quickly. It's interesting because her family have like a heroes wall in their house, and the wall is covered in photos of people that they deem to be heroic. So all of the men that have fought in wars are up there, but then all of the women are up there if they got married, which I thought was extremely misogynistic. Wow. Yeah. So she's at her brother's going away party. This isn't really a spoiler now because it happens quite early on in the book. She's at her brother's going away party because he is going to war, and one of his good friends comes over and says to her, Frankie, women can be heroes too. So that puts the idea in her head, and she tells them that she's going to join the army. She's going to follow her brother over to Vietnam, and expecting her family to be extremely proud of her and, delighted. But they're actually like appalled. Oh, why would you do this?
Wow, because a woman shouldn't be doing it. Like
a woman.
Oh,
yeah. It's no place for a woman and stuff like that. So just seems to be a very well-off character from a very well-off family, and her experience of the war just really kind of shone a light on the reality of real life, I suppose. Okay. And she kind of has a real coming of age story within the book. Lots and lots of unfortunate things cross her path. And like to the point where you would, like, I found I was sitting back going, can all of this misfortune actually happen to one person? But there are minor characters in the book. She makes very good friends with a black nurse called Barb from the south, and I think that she could be explored as a perspective, or you could get some more of her backstory. Like, we focus an awful lot in the book on Frankie, and I think that you don't write about what you don't know enough about, but on film or on screen, I think that there would be a huge opportunity to look at other characters, other women, the backgrounds they came and how they experienced it as well. I just think it's a really good book, particularly like because when they came home, everyone was like, but there were no women in Vietnam. That would be my choice. Okay. And I think it would be really, really intriguing. I'm very much into watching like a lot of war movies and, shows. Like Band of Brothers would be one of my favourite shows ever. I haven't watched it since becoming a parent because I think that would be very hard to watch. But I just find the psychology behind all of these things extremely interesting. Why people get involved in things, why people volunteer for things. Some people back away from these and are terrified to get involved in any kind of conflict. I don't like conflict or confrontation. It makes me extremely anxious and stuff. So like, I really find it fascinating that people just go, I'll go to war, sign up, head off. So I had a lot of admiration for her character. She could have very easily hit her head in the sand and not done anything. So I do think I just think it would be brilliant. I could see the likes of Reese Witherspoon now picking that up and giving that a go.
Yeah. I also really like the point you made where you said about those, minor characters, that they could be fleshed out more, because you could bring in screenwriters from those backgrounds.
Yes.
From that world who actually could write a really authentic character.
Yeah.
And like you said, Kristen Han obviously stays in her lane to a certain degree. She kind of writes what she knows about and what she has experience of to a degree. So yeah, that's a really good point as to why a story like that could be and why it should be put on screen to give those characters more of a voice.
Yeah.
I like that.
The other one that I was going to say, and I'm just going to slide this in very quickly to see what you would think of it, is our very first read-along book, Mad Honey.
Oh, yeah.
I think that would be brilliant.
That would be excellent, yeah. It would be, because you can imagine, like, obviously the kind of inciting incident would be very dramatic, and then you have the whole what happened, who's telling the truth, kind of the backstory element of it, the courtroom aspect. Like it kind of reminds me almost like, the screen adaptations of something like by John Grisham or something, as in where you can really big up that kind of element of it. So that's a really good suggestion, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I suppose like just an honorable mention then for a couple of things that have already been optioned and are coming to our screens as far as we know. Again, our beloved Project Hail Mary is apparently definitely coming out in 2026.
Apparently, definitely.
We were only talking after seeing The Pull of the Stars about, the rumours that it was supposed to be coming out and that Ryan Gosling was like going to be Ryland Grace, and we checked it on IMDb and everything, and then like literally the next day, I think was it, the announcement came out confirming it for 2026. So cannot wait for that. Yeah. And also Catherine Ryan Howard's 56 Days is going to be like a TV series, which I think will be very, very interesting as well. I'm a bit wary because I wonder how that will come across on the screen when it's been adapted by an American company, because obviously it is quite an Irish setting.
Yeah.
Even though the experience, I suppose, of COVID and kind of the claustrophobia of staying inside and staying within your area was a relatively universal experience at the time, which is why obviously it would translate quite well to screen and to other areas. But yeah, that's another one I'm really, really looking forward to.
Freddie to show Catherine Ryan Howard. Yeah, I'm delighted for it. That's excellent.
Yeah.
I also think, and you're going to be able to guess who I'm going to suggest now before the words even come out of my mouth, but I do think there is another Irish author that should definitely be looked at a little bit more for like screen adaptations, be it TV or movie.
Yeah.
Who am I thinking of?
I suspect you were going to say Andrea Mara.
Yes. Oh, I just think like I should nearly get commission at this rate for being like her hype girl. I don't know, someone said it to me recently. They were like, oh yeah, you love Andrea Mara, don't you? And I'm like, yes, I do. I absolutely
You like pushing her books onto people.
Yeah, and if people ask me like, what should I read to get into reading, I'll always go for Andrea Mara as a recommendation.
To be fair, she's very solid.
There's a lot of potential there for like a really gripping series. I think that she really pulls on our fears. As she said, like in her interview and stuff, she plays on the real fears and things that could happen and things that have happened to her. And she's just kind of elaborated on them a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think, somebody needs to...
We can keep everything crossed and like manifest it for her.
Yeah. I would love that. I think then, as you say, like, would you be really upset if they took it and changed it completely?
Yeah.
Because I think it was Andrea that said in an interview, like, would you mind, like, we were talking about like things being optioned, and would you mind if they changed things for the screen? And I think it was her. I'll have to go back and double check. But she was like, they can do whatever they want to it. Like they can do whatever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, no, you have to stay true to your characters.
But I suppose, like, going back to the whole adaptation point, like, when you write a story as a novel, you are specifically writing it with the novel format in mind. Whereas if you wanted something to be on film, you would write a script. Yeah. So I suppose the people who are writing the scripts are the ones going, well, this actually might not work for a film, and there is a certain amount of maybe having to rewrite things, but sometimes I think it's very hard to see when there are big changes made and you don't understand kind of why, or it doesn't seem necessary. That can be a bit irritating.
We recently watched The Couple Next Door, and when it ended, I was kind of going, God, this is a bit unusual. Like, I don't know what the book would have been like to read. So I had originally been planning on reading the book and then watching the adaptation, as we all do with our great intentions for these things, but didn't obviously get around to it. And I put it up on one of my Sunday Currently posts that I had watched it, and someone was talking about that they'd read it and were looking forward to watching it. And I think they watched like the first episode and read the synopses of the other episodes and was saying it was totally different.
Oh, really?
That maybe I should give the book a go because I might actually really enjoy the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just have to wait and see if this ever happens to your favourite gal.
Yeah. I'll keep my fingers crossed, Andrew.
I think that is it. We've covered our faves, our would like to sees, and a few more bits in between.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this and have an idea of what books you would like to see adapted, let us know in the comments below the post, I suppose, on our grid, because we obviously can only talk about the books that come into our minds, but it would be very interesting to see what books other people would love to see adapted. Yeah, I'd love to have this conversation with a million people because everybody's answers would be different.
Yeah.
And just the reasoning behind why you chose your book and why I chose mine. It's just...
And there is a book I almost went with instead of The Sparrow. So I will not say what it is here on the recording. I'll say it to you afterwards. But it would be very interesting to see if anyone else would suggest it. I think visually it would be very interesting.
Game.
Yeah.
Visually, okay. I have no idea.
That's not a great clue at all. But anyway, Sinead, thank you all for listening, as always.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, we really enjoyed chatting, as always. And we can't wait to hear what all of your suggestions are.
Slán go fóin.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Another Chapter podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share to keep the book conversation going. Thank you to Helen Becerra for the graphics, Mark Neville for the mixing, and to each of our contributors. Music is Make It Work by All Good Folks.
Don't forget to follow along on Instagram at Another Chapter Podcast. We'll see you there.